What needs to be in your SaaS Metrics Playbook for 2025? Well, let's find out in today's edition of SaaS Metrics School. Welcome. My name is Ben Murray. So, you need the right data and metrics to scale your business. It's no mistake when SaaS companies get big. When they hit 10 million, 20, 50, 100 million and beyond, they are using a very formulaic approach to reach those levels. Of course, not just on the finance side, just throughout the business. But let's talk about your SaaS Metrics Playbook for 2025. So, the first pillar, and this is based on my Five-Pillar SaaS Metrics Framework. I'll put a link in the show notes. I've got some free training coming up in mid-January covering this playbook. So the first pillar is growth. And this growth is usually coming from, or the data is coming from our CRM system. Now, if we're self-service SaaS, that's coming from our MR schedules, our MR waterfall. But we need to understand how much new growth are we getting? How much incremental expansion growth are we getting? How many logos we're acquiring our users, or make sure we get that parent-child relationship correct as well. So we have to understand growth. Without that growth data, we are blind on go-to-market efficiency metrics, which I'll talk about in the last pillar here today. The second pillar is retention. So we're acquiring customers, we're keeping customers. Well, are we keeping customers? We have to track customer retention, gross revenue retention, and net revenue retention, important metrics. Also, I recommend a CSAT score as well, whether you're doing NPS or CSAT or some other customer feedback. It's a great complement to support those great retention numbers. And then also something that's coming up more are RPOs, remaining performance obligations. We want to see that number moving up and to the right. I address that metric in my SaaS Metrics Foundation course. The next, margins. So we're scaling. We're ARR is going up. We're adding employees, contractors. Now we have to be very careful with our margin profile. Are we running 80% best in class? Are we running 50%, 60, 70? Of course, we don't expect perfect gross profit right out of the gate. Usually it's very high, but then we build out that COGS function and it starts scaling down. And then it has to start scaling up into the 70s with 80% being the best. And then we have to understand margins by revenue stream. How much were you making on services revenue, subscription, variable revenue? Often I see services revenue suffering negative margins, and that is a drag on cash flow if you're bootstrapping or have a really tight cash balance. So our margin profile, so important. That is such a high hurdle to overcome if we're trying to get to profitability and increase our cash flow, but we have low gross profit. The next is our financial profile. So rule of 40, our OpEx profile. For example, R&D as a percent of revenue. They're great benchmarks for all of this. And again, the right metrics, the right benchmarks for the right stage of our business. Your OpEx profile will look much different at 3 million ARR than 20 million ARR, different expectations based on the size of your company. Then we look at EBITDA margins, very important. And that's a long-term proxy for cash flow. I know lovers and haters of EBITDA out there, but if we do it right, it's a good proxy for cash flow generation ability, which of course your private equity investors will love. Next, the final pillar, pillar 5 in my 5-pillar SaaS metrics framework is efficiency, not just our sales and marketing team, but also org efficiency. But go to market, again, pillar 1, growth. We need that bookings data to calculate CAC payback, cost of ARR, LTV to CAC, all must-have metrics if we're looking to scale our business and also go through a due diligence process. And then org efficiency, so important. This ties back to some of those foundational pillars like gross profit. We have to have good org efficiency, or that has to be moving up and to the right if we're trying to get to cash flow break even and positive EBITDA. We need the ROSE metric, which is the amount of recurring revenue generated for every dollar of employee and contractor investment. We need that to go up and to the right. And I like that metric better than revenue per FTE because who knows if we're tracking FTEs correctly? Who knows how many contractors, freelancers we have? So often I see that FTE, rep per FTE number is a lot higher than what it really should be. So that's why you have to calculate the ROSE metric. I'll talk about that in my training. I talk about my SaaS Metrics Foundation course as well. And what I see is if you hit $1.50 of the ROSE metric, so $1.50 of recurring revenue generated for every dollar employee and contractor investment, usually you have really good financial consistency, positive EBITDA every month. So that's one of those after helping SaaS companies on the fractional CFO side for the past 4 years, it's really honed in. So about $1.50 and above, you're going to be in really good shape. If you have great gross profit retention, man, you're developing a great financial profile. So I went through my SaaS Metrics Playbook that you should implement for 2025. I'll have a link in the show notes to some free training in January where you can download my 5-Pillar Metrics Framework as well that you can use in your business. And I also have some courses coming up, a live cohort in February and April, where I go through this entire process so you can implement your metrics playbook and use the right data and metrics to scale your business. It's both live and on-demand content. So I say the best of both worlds here. So I'll put a link in that as well. So I hope everyone close out Q4 really strong and we're rolling into 2025 with a lot of momentum. So I hope everyone's doing well. Take care and we'll talk next time.